ChoralEd. Hello, fellow choral directors, and welcome to episode 24 of ChoralEd. I'm your host, Micah Bland. Thanks so much for watching. For today's episode, I am pleased to welcome to the show, all the way from York, Maine, Mr. Rob Westerberg. As we continue our series on sight reading, Rob will be sharing with us about the numbers sight reading method. For some of you, I know you might be thinking that, well, I don't use numbers in my classroom, so I'll just skip to the next episode. But before you do that, I want to share with you that even though you might not use this method, there are still a lot of great concepts and takeaways that can be transferred into your own preferred method. And so I hope you stick around as we hear from Rob Westerberg about the numbers sight reading method.
My favorite activity that I get to do every year is walk out on stage about 10 or 15 minutes or so before my spring concerts begin. And I teach the audience to sight read. I have a screen down. First of all, there's a picture of a hand, and then eventually it's replaced by a picture of the staff. And within 10-15 minutes, my audience is not only reading music and singing, but they're singing in two-part harmony. And the reason we're able to do that in short order is because I'm using a system that 100% of the audience has been familiar with since the age of 2, and that's using numbers. My name is Rob Westerberg, and I'm the choral director at York High School in York, Maine, and it's a real pleasure to be able to talk about the system of using numbers for a few minutes. The first question that should be on everyone's mind who's choosing to watch this is, why in the world wouldn't you just use solfege? There's so many great reasons for using solfege. Why not go there? And I think for me, there's probably several different reasons that I have used numbers my entire career and would encourage people to consider it. And the first one really begins with, you need to know your audience. If you are working with students who are already literate to some degree in solfege, it makes all the sense in the world to keep building on that. If they have a clear understanding, why abandon it? And you should go there. The problem with that is if you have an audience of students who aren't familiar with solfege, but you're trying to simultaneously get them to learn that system as well as having them apply that system, we all know that pedagogically that doesn't work with any system. There has to be some familiarity with it. And I know that all my students in my choirs all know numbers. We actually have a graduation requirement specifically for music at York, and about 71% of all the graduates at York have sung with me in concert, but I only get one semester with them, and there's no chance I'm going to get my students literate if I'm simultaneously trying to get them to also learn and then apply solfege. So number one, know your audience. Numbers might be a perfect fit for you. It might not be a perfect fit for you. That's for you to determine. Another wonderful reason, ironically enough, is because you really have to develop good tone when you're singing numbers. And I know what many are probably thinking right now, which is, well, that's the point to solfege. They're all pure vowels. Of course you can develop great tone with solfege. And my only comment to that would be, that's perfect if all you're ever singing is Latin, because solfege is just an extension of the ut queant laxis, which was composed around 1,000 or so, composed when it was sung, and it's all Latin, and it's a derivative of pure vowels. That's fine, but the moment you start singing something like English, there's a lot of choirs that have great tone right up until they have to sing English or some other language with brighter vowels. Using numbers gives you practice developing your tone with those inconvenient vowels. And there's nothing more inconvenient than trying to sing 3, 5, 6, or 7 with a good tone. And if your choirs can do that, then it's a really quick leap then to go from that to being able to sing whatever language is in front of them with a good tone. Another reason for me is a wonderful connection to music theory. I can go right from what we're doing in chorus directly on over the board and connect it to intervals, connect it to the triads, connect it to the chords. There's so many different connections we're able to make because we're using numbers that translate beautifully to the work that we would ever do in music theory. So those are some of the reasons why numbers has worked for me. Some of the logistics. First of all, you know that you're going to have single numbers for 1, 2 through 6, and then 7, of course, is a problem. So our students just sing sev instead of 7, and it works out fine. We know 1 and 8 are 2 different numbers, but then the students simply look at the function of that tonic note, and is the function of the tonic to then sing above it, in which case they think of the tonic as 1. If the function of that tonic is to then sing beneath it, they sing it as 8. 1 and 8 are completely interchangeable. And within the purpose of sight reading or being analytical about the notes in front of you as you look at it for the first time, either one is perfectly okay to be thinking of it that way. Some of the strategies for initially going at it, I think really are shown relatively well in how I approach the videos with my audiences. When we first have everything show up on the screen, they can see nothing but a hand, and then we simply take it from there.
Give it a shot with me, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You just said it. What I would like you to do is take a look at the first note. We're going to call that 1, and do you see how there's a line through it? If that's 1, then what's the space? Just like the hand. And if the space is 2, the line is? Absolutely. So the numbers don't change. It's still finger, space, or in this case, line, space, and so on. Ready? Good luck. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5, 4, 3, 4, 5. Look ahead. 3. You did it. You read music. Have everyone sing 1 and. Good. We're going to do a little trick that we do with tone sometimes. Please sing 1 like a really well-trained elementary school choir, and a well-trained junior high choir, or really well-trained with good tone, and you're now a senior in high school, you're 4 more years grown. You're now seniors in college. You've taken 4 years of private voice lessons, whatever that means to you. Now, the trick is, can you sing the top line or the bottom line with the correct rhythms and the correct pitches while singing with that collegiate sound, which, by the way, is just a good sound. 1, here we go. 1, 2, you all start on 1, so try it. 2, ready, and go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Congratulations.
And then you can simply apply those same concepts to the classroom setting, and students can do their sight reading in either unison or in harmony.
Oh.
So one of the things that you notice from the video is something we all inherently kind of know, and that's we're really not trying to teach our students pitch per se. We're trying to teach them to apply pitch to a system that organizes those pitches. There's a wonderful video on YouTube by Bobby McFerrin called The Power of the Pentatonic Scale. And in this video, he takes an audience filled of non-music people, and he basically has them sing a pitch on 1, then moves on to 2, and he bounces back and forth. And I think it's on 3, he bounces over to 3, all of them sing it correctly, but he didn't tell them ahead of time what that pitch was. They just already heard it. There's a more contemporary example Jacob Collier has put out. There's some really great videos of him on stage showing, just pointing up and down pitches to his audience, and they're singing in 4-part harmony. He's not using solfege. He's also not using numbers. They hear that number, they hear that note when he goes up and down like this accurately. So if you have an audience in front of you, your students, who look at you and have not a clue what this is, 100% of them are going to know exactly what you're talking about when you go like that. And this is what that can look like. And then if you really want to see if your students are able to find those pitches using numbers, try getting them to multitask mentally, where instead of saying 2 to 4, you say 2 and then say, okay, times 2, plus 1, minus 3, and get them to think of something other than what the pitch is. They have to find the answer mentally. Even something as simple as they're singing 3 plus 2, what is it? But then they immediately have to match that pitch. So you get to find out, are they still having to focus on getting their pitch correct on numbers, or is it now happening automatically? It's a wonderful little trick to do to see how your students are doing as far as applying their knowledge of numbers.
Minus 1, 2, plus 1, 3, plus 1, minus 2, plus 3, plus 1.
Next, we work on harmonies. The first clip here is harmonies triadic, up and down. And so if I say plus 1, minus 1, like I was earlier on melody, now we're simply applying that to a harmonic structure. You find out very quickly if your students are able to hang on to that accuracy of pitch. Once you've done that, you get to find out if they're able to hold pitch while having dissonant harmonies. This gets really interesting. Students will always want to fix a dissonance. And if you're really staying true to the pitch that you're supposed to be on, you're going to hold tight to the number rather than your ear telling you whether that sounds good or not. The analytical piece comes down to how does my note fit in the harmony, even if it's not a consonant harmony. And then if you start with a dissonant harmony, that's really good ear training.
That's a piano accurately, and plus 1. Plus 1. Good work, minus 1. Try to look less scared. Minus 1. Plus 1. Plus 1. Minus 2.
My students' favorite warm-up is harmonies, dissonant harmonies, perhaps starting out consonant, but then only moving one part at a time. And for this, very often, the students will come forward and actually do the exercise. They can do all these exercises to begin with. This one they really have fun with. And they really find very quickly how complex it is to be listening to all these harmonies while moving one part at a time and seeing how things shift. And then as you shift the sopranos up or down by one, then what am I going to move next that's going to sound really cool in response to that? It's wonderful to watch. The gears kind of initially grind, but then eventually they start getting it, and they're playing around with the harmonies, and a lot of them have a lot of fun with it, but 100% of them get to then apply that knowledge when they go back to their seat and they're singing, especially dissonant harmonies in their literature. It gives them a very different perspective on how everything fits. And finally, within reading in the rehearsal, it all comes down to knowing where one is, just like you would need to know where do is, a clear understanding of key signatures and tonality. You can have debates whether you want to sing minor as the tonic in a minor key being 1 or the tonic in a minor key being 6. I tend to use 6, and we're simply talking about relative minor. And we have a conversation about that. What is relative minor? If you share the same key signature, but you start on a different tonic of a scale, then there's clear understanding of what's going on. The only other thing that sometimes comes up with using numbers, and I know this has been talked about in the video series before, is what in the world do you do with your half steps? And I would always argue this. You can't teach a person to run until the person has learned to walk. And you can't teach a person to walk until that person has learned to crawl. Numbers is a wonderful way to get someone who is not musically literate to become musically literate. And once they are musically literate, to use those numbers to train their ears, the intervals, the harmonies, the consonant ones, the dissonant ones. And then it's then a next step to work out the half steps. And what my students do is they just look at the function of the accidental. In this particular case, if they're looking at a piece of music that is in the key of C and they see a D sharp, they would sing 1, 2 sharp. They would literally sing 1 sharp. The function of that sharp, they just sing whatever the function is. Likewise, if they're in the key of F and they see a B natural, they know the function is a raised fourth, and so they would actually sing that as sharp. Now, you can say, well, that's a little bit more confusing than, well, it's natural how they know to sing it sharp. And I would simply say this: if you're using numbers, you have to be analytical about what the function is of your music. That takes longer, but the moment you do it, then there's clearer understanding of why a composer did what they did. And you're going to have to know what that function was either way, whether it's numbers or solfege. Solfege is really good for advanced singers in that you have the built-in half steps. But to train your singers and to get them literate to the point that they're able to do that, numbers is going to get you there very quickly. One of the warm-ups that I'll do with my students is I will sing 1 sharp, 2 sharp, 3, 4 sharp, 5 flat, 4, 3 flat, 2 flat, 1. We can actually use the hands as either a sharp or a flat, and depending on whether we want to be moving up or down, what that flat or what that sharp is. It just helps understand a little bit more. And in the final analysis, we don't want to have students use either solfege or numbers. We just want them to be able to hear pitch by looking at it and just hearing it. I would argue that training students' ears is at least as important as whatever function, whatever system you use, whether it's solfege or numbers. Numbers is a wonderful way to help a student get there. It's not a better way, but it might be, depending on your audience. It might be a worse way, depending on your audience. And in the final analysis, it really does come down to it depends. My hope is that all of us can view solfege and numbers as really wonderful tools that we have in our toolkit to get our students literate and able to sight read.
Thanks so much, Rob, for sharing your insights with us today. To our viewers, I want to encourage you to check out some of those other ChoralEd videos that Rob referenced in his discussion. And as always, thanks for watching, and I hope you continue to inspire the future leaders of our world through this wonderful gift we call music. Thanks.